Introduction to Office Software, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint using Windows 11. One of the main reasons for using a computer is to access the internet. And the most common service on the internet is the World Wide Web. You access the World Wide Web using a program called a browser. There are quite a few different browsers, but most of them work pretty much the same way. The one we're describing here is called Microsoft Edge. The internet is a large number of devices, computers, and other kinds of devices that have communication capability connected together in an enormous communications network. Each of the devices, sites on this network is identified with a unique Internet Protocol IP address. IP addresses are described using a combination of 4 numbers separated by periods or dots. 72.21.211.176. These 4 numbers are from 0 to 255. Now, combinations of 4 numbers are not easy to keep track of and remember, and so the most popular sites anyway are given text identifications, uniform resource locators, uniform resource identifiers. Easier for people to use and keep track of. A fairly typical World Wide Web request reference might look like http://www.example.com/index.html. This illustrates common components of an World Wide Web or an Internet reference. It has a protocol. HTTP is the most common protocol, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It has a host name. This identifies the computer or device where the resource you're looking for referencing lives. www.example.com is a standard form for a URL or host name. And this references a resource, a file in this case, on that computer. Now, it's common to leave off the protocol. We might, for example, just reference or type www.example.com index.html. If your browser sees a reference without a protocol, something : then it's going to assume or try to use the protocol HTTP or HTTPS, which is the secure version of HTTP. It's also common to reference a host name with or without a protocol and not specify a file, a resource on that URL, on that site. If you don't see a file, then the browser is going to assume that you want to a default file name, and the most common default file name would be index.html. Here are some fairly standard looking URL references. HTTPS, secure HTTP, mail.google.com URL, and directory file name. HTTP correo.upr.edu. Okay, so it's going to assume a default file name. And we have a different protocol, FTP, and ftp.gnu.org is the identifier for the computer that has what we're looking for. When you want to access something on the World Wide Web, you start by executing a browser. You do that by finding the appropriate icon and clicking on it. Here we have icon for Microsoft Edge. You can also find the icon here in the start. When you click on the icon, the browser program starts executing, and it requests and displays a default web page from a default URL. You can change the display in the browser window by entering a URL in the address bar, as shown here. The browsers suggest URL values as you type. Address bar. The most common way to get a new window, a new browser window, is by clicking on a link in the browser display window. A hyperlink or link is an object, a section of text, an image associated with another web site. Most often, commonly a web page. When you click on with the cursor pointing to a link, the browser attempts to retrieve the associated item and display it in the window. Now you can tell if the cursor is pointing to a link because the cursor, instead of having the form of an arrow, will have the form of a finger. Here we have a link, another link, another link, another link. Good. If you click, you get the associated web site. Email is a system for exchanging messages using the internet. Email is one of the oldest services provided by the internet, much older than FTP, much older than the World Wide Web. Email systems use a store and forward model. When a user sends an email message, it gets stored. It gets stored in an account on the email server, and it stays there until the recipient logs in and checks and downloads the messages. That way, the sender and the receiver don't have to be online at the same time. The sender just has to be online long enough to send the message. The receiver only has to be online long enough to download to receive the message. There are lots of email sites. Most companies have individual servers for their employees. Most schools of any size have email servers for their faculty and their students. Different email providers use different interface programs for users to interact with their systems. We're going to be dealing with Microsoft Outlook, one of the more widely used ones, and fairly typical of email interface systems in general. There are a lot of email service providers. Yahoo, Hotmail, Gmail are among the best known. To access your email messages, enter the URL of the server and identify your email account. You'll be required to enter a password for the account, and the user window opens. It'll display the messages that the account has received. When you click on one of the entries, that will open the message in the email window. The earliest email systems were text only, but modern email systems can contain multimedia, images, sounds, videos, the works. Now you can also use your email system to send emails. To send an email using Outlook, you start by clicking on the new message icon in the upper left-hand part of the Outlook window. A new message window opens. The new message display shows in the reading pane. You can enter the address of the intended recipients at the top of the window, as well as those who should receive copies. You should also include a subject heading so that the recipient has some idea of what they would get if they were to open and read it. So you have the recipients, any people who should be copied, and a subject heading. You type your message directly below into the new message window, or you can paste text or graphics into it from the clipboard. You can also use your new message control bar to edit the contents of your message in various ways. There are a number of tools that appear in the control bar to allow you to control the appearance of the text. Most of them are very similar to what's available in other Microsoft Office products, Microsoft Word in particular. But several of these icons are specific to email. Among the functions in the new message control bar that are particularly useful in sending emails, we have an icon that supports the insertion of emojis. We have an icon that, we click on it, allows us to insert a picture or image. We can attach copies of files that will be sent to the recipient with a paperclip icon, and we can, with the chain link icon, insert a link to sites on the internet. As an example, how we might compose and send an email, if we wanted to send a recipe to a friend, we would probably start with an ingredient list, a list of the ingredients in the recipe. Now this could be a little long, And so it would be better to create the list before logging into the email server. You make use of a text editor or word processing program. Since it's a relatively simple application, Notepad would probably be a good choice for creating an ingredient list, unless it's an extremely long ingredient list. Once we have it composed, then we could log in and copy the ingredient list into our email. So we would use Notepad to create the ingredient list, check it, correct errors, make modifications. When it is in the shape, the state that we want it to be, then we would log into the email program. To start the email now, we open the new message window and enter the addresses, email addresses of the recipients. Goldilocks at Fictitious, and any other recipients of copies. Then we enter a title, a new recipe, and a message. Having entered the message, we then copy the ingredients into the clipboard. That is, we select the list in the Notepad display and copy using Control-C. That copies the selection into the clipboard. Then we place the cursor at the point where we want the ingredient list and press Control-V, and it copies the content of the clipboard into the email composition window. It's also nice on occasion to attach a picture, a graphic image, in this case a picture of the dish that we're sending the recipe of. Click on the attach file icon and we navigate to the directory where the image is. Then we click the Open button and it attaches a copy of the picture. At which point we're ready. Click the Send button and it sends the email to the designated recipients.